Our next speaker organized the first Capitol rally for legalization in 1987, 30 years ago. 30 years ago, you're standing on his shoulders, literally. No other person in our state has worked harder to fight for legal weed. He has been rebuked and he has been scorned, but he has always spoken truth to power. Let's listen to him today. Please welcome Chris Wright.
Hi, folks. I'd like to thank Normal and our honored guests tonight. And today I'm happy to announce my candidacy for governor of the state of Minnesota. I wish I had more time to explain how I intend to address the pressing issues of our state, but I'd like to invite you to go out to my website, votewright.org. That's vote, WRIGHT.org. Minnesota and America has more problems than we deserve and more solutions than we apply. Suffice it to say that I support campaign finance reform and citizen-owned elections. I support single-payer health care system with a state-of-the-art medical waste, fraud, and abuse detection system to catch the crime in the suites, and a tuition-free higher education system that reins in administrative bloat. At all levels of education, the teaching of critical thinking is paramount. Without the moral values of truth, fairness, and objectivity in a question-driven society trained in critical thinking, a democratic government cannot endure nor be reformed. The global catastrophe of climate change requires us to take bold action to combat global warming. To stay within 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, we can only pollute another 270 gigatons into the atmosphere of greenhouse gases. If Minnesota begins now, and I mean now, to reduce these emissions by 3% per year, then we can meet this target by zero by 2050. To get us started, I propose a simple law that mandates that all new electrical power generation shall be renewable. Switching gears, we need to take back the money power. If you could create $9 out of $10 out of nothing and charge interest for it, well, then any counterfeiter could rule the world. And they do. With a fraction of reserves, our bankers can create their money out of nothing. That's the concept of fractional reserve lending in a nutshell. When Congress surrendered the money power to the private bankers, they enslaved Americans as servants to the lender, sanctioned bankers as the ruling class, and authorized them to dictate our laws. To call this a rigged economic system is a colossal understatement. This is the root cause of wealth and income inequality. Now, in 1873, Wisconsin Supreme Court Justice Edward G. Ryan said, "Which shall rule, wealth or man? Which shall lead, money or intellect? Who shall fill public stations, educated and patriotic free man, or the feudal serfs of corporate capital?" Well, the solution is to end fractional reserve lending, but that can only be done at the federal level with a bill like H.R. 2990, the NEED Act, introduced by Dennis Kucinich. On the state level, we can end this inequality by introducing money at the bottom of the wealth pyramid to benefit everyone, not just the wealthy. I will propose a Minnesota Renewable Energy and Transportation Act using bank-created money to monetize renewable energy in our transportation infrastructure without taxes or bonding, creating thousands of high-paying jobs, great roads, and lower energy costs. In order to fix our broken criminal justice system, we need to repeal prohibition and the racist war on drugs. In 1875, legal theorist Lysander Spooner, he said, well, vices are those acts by which a man harms himself or his property. Crimes are those acts by which one man harms the person or property of another. Vices are not crimes. By criminalizing drugs, the prohibitionists have created perverse incentives to commit crimes by creating a profit motive. Moreover, criminalizing vice monetizes crime, which is tantamount to soliciting crime. For instance, a contract killer and his contractor are murderers. Likewise, a drug-related murder is a prohibitionist monetized murder. It is not illegal to be a prohibitionist, but to insist that the prohibitionist lawmaker is not a criminal is to declare the truth to be a lie. Now, I was the first to challenge in the courts the provision in the Constitution called Article 13, Section 7, which says any person may sell or peddle the products of the farm or garden occupied and cultivated by him without obtaining a license therefor. All that is required to legalize cannabis, hemp, and be in compliance with the Constitution is to remove raw medicinal farm products from the Controlled Substances Act, period. It wouldn't violate the Constitution to regulate farmers to sell only their raw medicinal product license-free to licensed distributors. And maybe it's okay for the Democratic Farmer Labor Party to violate their oaths of office in pursuit of revenue. But in my view, nullifying the fundamental rights of farmers and Minnesotans is not an option. Now, many of you may not agree with me, but I say no on 926 and 927 until they come into compliance with Article 13, Section 7. And no one should support these laws, especially as part of a constitutional amendment that would be extremely difficult to repeal or declare unconstitutional in the courts. When President Nixon announced the war on drugs in 1971 and Reagan in 1982, it was a great revelation when Special Counsel to the President, John Ehrlichman, said the Nixon White House had two enemies, the anti-war left and black people. We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or black, but by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and blacks with heroin, then we could criminalize both heavily. We could disrupt their communities. We could arrest their leaders. We could raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night on the evening news. Did we know that we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did. That was his quote. The money power and their wealthy campaign contributors win political and economic power when they can divide us by race, creed, color, national origin, whether you're having an abortion, the war on drugs, whether you're straight or whether you own a gun or not. And while we're out there fighting it out, they're laughing all the way to the fractional reserve bank. Well, let me finish by saying, in Henry Wadsworth Longfellow's poem, The Song of Hiawatha, Minnehaha died of starvation and fever, waiting for her beloved Hiawatha, who arrived empty-handed and too late to save her. Hiawatha's sorrow and Minnehaha's suffering only lasted a lifetime, but the suffering of Minnesota's most vulnerable, the poor, elderly, impoverished children, disabled, discriminated minorities, without education, without health care, have lasted for generations. Join with me, and together we will dry the tears that have filled 10,000 lakes. Thank you.
Filibuster man. Yeah, I thought you didn't like filibusters.
Give another round of applause for yourselves.